You know, budget audiophiles love Fosi for one simple reason. You get great sound that doesn't drain your wallet. So when they came out with their SP-601, their first speaker, you know, I had to check these out. See, $399 boxes, can they actually compete with speakers that maybe cost twice their price? Well, we're going to find out in this video. Hey, Bruce here for Desktop Hi-Fi. On this channel, I review affordable hi-fi gear designed for desktop listening, near-field listening, such as DACs, amps, headphones, streamers, small speakers that makes music fun again. That's the idea of this channel. And by the way, how many audiophiles does it take to change a light bulb? None. They're still arguing about the direction of the bulb, which should face for better imaging. Da 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 da. Nope. Well, you didn't come here for jokes anyway. I would like to thank Fosi for sending these to me for review at no cost. However, all opinions are my own. No one reviews my videos prior to posting. So let's jump into the review of these bookshelf speakers. So let me share with you my first impressions, my initial impressions of these. Because first thing I have to do, and let me just take this grill cover off, is just tell you, I think these are really nice looking speakers. I think they look somewhat like the Q Acoustic C series. However, these were custom made and tuned by Fosi with the concept of providing rich bass, clear and pleasant mids, and treble. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, these are a bit large for some desktops as they measure 8.67 inches in width, 14 inches tall, and about 11.5 inches in depth, all right? So, did they put them on the desk? Probably not, but on stands or maybe a tabletop or large shelves, it would work just fine. Now, these are available in a white and black finish, all right? I do wish that Fosi had a walnut finish available as well. The cabinet is an MDF composite material. And when I first saw these, I thought, wow, that woofer looks just like the Klipsch, because I have the RP-600Ms. I've got several Klipsch speakers. However, this is custom made for Fosi. I think this really looks good. That's the Fosi orange, by the way. I was definitely excited to spend some time listening to these because I am a huge Fosi fan. And I love the look, and I know that they're pretty easy on the wallet. Okay, so let's talk about some of the features in the build of the 601s. Now, these are a two-way bass reflex design bookshelf speakers, and nominal impedance on these is rated at 4 ohms, continuous power at 80 watts, and peak to peak at 160 watts. Okay. Now on the back you have your bass port. No plug came with the box. So depending on how close you put these in the wall, you may need to do that to keep getting the boomy bass going. And then of course you have your two connectors for your speakers. By the way, these will accept bare wire and banana plugs. Okay. They also come with magnetic grills. I listened to these and auditioned them with and without them. I couldn't really tell much of a difference in the sound quality either way. I just think they kind of look great with that nice orange woofer. Speaking of the woofer, this is a composite material made of paper and aluminum in the Fosi orange color. They call these hybrid cone woofers. You know, I think it's important to understand that this is Fosi's first speaker, and they did a lot right. You know, at retail at $399, there is no doubt these were built to a price point. But I'll give Fosi kudos for the overall appearance of the 601s, and I think that they do deliver some features that meet or exceed expectations in their price range. Now, before I go more about how the 601s sound, I want to make something clear. I don't watch other reviews of a product that I'm looking at. I don't want to be tainted with somebody else's opinions. I want to review them on my own terms, right? I don't want any preconceived notions of how a product's going to operate or sound before I review it. And for much of my testing, I try to stay as much as I could in the Fosi family. I did use the SMSL PL150 as a CD transport and the Weem Pro Plus connected to the Fosi ZD3 DAC and then to a ZP3 preamp and then finally the ZA3 amp. But I also connected them to my NAD B 316B V2 And also I use the HIFIMAN Serenade R DAC as well. Now for music, I have a Plex server set up. I've ripped all my CDs to ALAC, which is Apple's version of FLAC. And I tried different types of music. But you know what? I thought a list of female jazz vocalists would be some great testing material. Now, one album in particular that I listen to very critically is Joni Mitchell's Blue. Right? If you want a true test of any speaker or headphone, Joni Mitchell's Blue is where you start. This album is pure intimacy. Every note, every breath, every tiny guitar string is captured fantastically. Is that a word? Fantastically? Maybe. Mid-range, Joni's voice is the star here. Rich, he's emotional, incredibly detailed. You know what? Good gear makes you feel like she's right in the room with you. As far as the instruments and soundstage is concerned, the acoustic guitar, the piano, have amazing separation. You can hear the pick of the strings, the piano's resonance. It's a master class in clarity and natural sound. You know, I also tested for dynamics, and this album swings from delicate whispers to fuller passengers, so it's perfect for checking out how your system handles quiet versus louder moments. And the sense of space in the room, the air around the instruments, comes through beautifully on a well-tuned setup. You know, I think this is a timeless album. It's technically a great reference. If your system can do Blue justice, you're doing something really, really right. You know, I think out of the box, they really surprised me because they are bright, they are airy, and they throw a pretty wide soundstage for their size. You know, instruments are separated nicely, and there's a sense of space that I think is really impressive for a $400 pair of speakers. But when I put them up against my Klipsch RP-600Ms, the differences are pretty obvious, right? The Klipsch had a little bit more body to it, and especially in the mid-range. Vocals just seem fuller, more in the room, I guess. The Fosi's mid-range seemed to be just a bit recessed in the mix. It's clean, but not quite as textured as the Klipsch. Now, as far as treble, the 601 is crisp. There's a lift probably around 4 to 6 kilohertz. So female vocals can sound, or cymbals, for example, can sound just a bit sharp, especially at higher volumes where the 600Ms has energy on top, but it handles it more gracefully, I think. Smoother, but maybe a little less fatiguing. But the 600Ms were the closest speaker I have in my home right now for testing purposes. I don't have any other reference speaker that would be that close of a match. Bass, let me tell you my impressions about the bass. First off, I think with just about most bookshelf speakers, you really should have a subwoofer. And with the ZP3, you can have control over the bass as well. But regardless, this is where kind of shows its limits in the bass department. See, it stays 44 hertz. But I never felt that deep bass with it. It's more realistically, probably starts to rolling off around about 70 hertz. So definitely recommend a subwoofer if this is going to be your primary speakers, which Fosi, I believe, offers a sub as well. I should reach out to them about that. But realistically, it starts rolling off, I'd say around about 70, 80 hertz. Mid-bass has the punch, right? But the deeper lows, they're just kind of missing. And I think the 600M, for example, I think it digs a little bit deeper, a little bit more weight and control in the kick drums and bass guitar. The Fosi feels a bit lighter, and pairing it with a sub or maybe a little EQ really helps. And that's exactly what I did through the ZP3 preamp. Just gave it a little bit more bass and it did fine. Where this does shine, okay, is in its imaging. In a small room or near-field setup, it creates a convincing soundstage. And let me tell you, I've been running the KEF Q150s, KEF Q350s, which have excellent soundstage and imaging. And I tell you, I was surprised, but the 601s definitely sounded pretty doggone close to the KEF Q150s based on the imaging. You know, because instruments on here are just really well defined, left to right. Clarity is solid for casual listening, and for the price, that's pretty doggone impressive. So comparing it with the Klipsch RP-600Ms that I have handy and well on its own merits. I would say that this has a bright and detailed and slightly lean sound. However, you'll notice less mid-range in weight and less low-end impact, but it's tidy, it's nice looking, and can sound fantastic with the right placement and maybe just a touch of EQ. For a budget bookshelf speaker, this really does punch above its weight. Just don't expect it to match speakers costing a lot more money, but I think it's a high value product. So let me begin my summary of my review of the SP-601s with some pros and cons. Pros, I think they look fantastic for the price, don't they? I just think these are super sharp looking speakers. I think the cabinet seems to be very well made. It's maybe just a small amount of resonance, but nothing that you can't overcome easily. It's got solid mid-bass punch, and it's got deep wide imaging for a decent soundstage. So for the price, I don't think you can really go wrong. Cons. All right, maybe the mids are a little bit recessed. A little EQ will take care of that. I don't think that these go down quite as deep in bass as what Fosi states, but I didn't have a tool to measure that with. That's not what this channel is all about. There does, as I said, seem to be just a small bit of resonance in the cabinet, but nothing, no showstoppers that I could think of. So I think the 601s are a respectable set of bookshelf speakers for Fosi. And especially given that these are their first speakers, I think with the right placement, the right amp, like the ZA3 or the V3s, absolutely sound brilliant. And a bit of EQ gets you that ZP3 preamp. And definitely a sub, okay? Room correction with the Weem, for example, did make a nice improvement for me in the mids and the bass, by the way. So overall, or I should say, however, all my listening was done with no EQ and no room correction. Will these beat higher tier speakers? Well, no. But these are affordable and can sound great, and dare I say they look great doing it. Well, that's my review of the Fosi SP-601s. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.